I'm Cindi McGee. Today I'm using items from the Ocean of Dreams Create-Along box to create this fun fish necklace in this plain black and white palette so that it'll go with almost anything. I began with some white Primo that I conditioned and rolled to a setting number 3 on my clay machine. I'm using the printed magic transfer paper that came with this month's box. You want to place it face down onto the clay sheet and rub it or burnish it in a bit, and then you want to let it set about 15 minutes or so that it begins to sort of meld with the clay before you go to the next step. This super fun Ocean of Dreams silkscreen that came in the box is going to be my next step. I'm using again a sheet of Primo that I've rolled to a 3, and I'm going to place the silkscreen orange side down onto the clay sheet. I'm only going to be using a small portion, so I'm choosing the pattern that I want to make sure to get when I silkscreen. Place it on face down, orange side down. I like to use my roller and just give it a little smooth to make sure that it's flat against the clay sheet. Then I'm using some black acrylic paint to silkscreen my image. You do want to be sure to wash your silkscreen immediately after use so that the paint doesn't dry and it's ready for use the next time. For this step, I'm using a clay sheet that I rolled to a setting number 2 on the clay machine. And I'm going to use my fish patterned deco disc that came with the box. It's best to use a release agent when you're using the deco discs. You can use mica powder or cornstarch or plain old water. Water is my preferred way to do this. I'm just going to give it a little dunk and then place it onto the sheet of clay where I want it and give them firm, even pressure to transfer the pattern to the clay. I did this 2 or 3 times to cover that sheet. I love this fish pattern. It's got lots of tiny little details and it's just a really fun option for any kind of beach or ocean themed project. Now I was ready to begin making my fish. I'm using the fishy template that came in the box. This is so much fun. And I'm going to start with the largest template for my main centered piece on my necklace. And I love this little octopus, so I'm centering my template over the octopus and just giving it a light press to adhere it. And then I'm going to use my craft knife to carefully cut around the template to create the shape. I'm using the same fishy template, but this time I'm using the smallest fish, and I'm going to cut 4 fish from the textured clay sheet. Now that the magic transfer paper has had a bit of time to set, I'm going to proceed with the next step. This is the way I like to do it. You can run it gently under some water and just gently rub, but I like to do it this way. I'm just dabbing on some water and covering the surface, and you will begin to see the paper begin to sort of puff up and disintegrate, and it turns to sort of a slush, which you very, very gently want to remove from the surface. Once I have most of that paper removed, I do take it to the sink and just use that really light stream of water just to rinse away any remaining, and then I let it dry. I'm using the same fishy template to cut 2 medium-sized fish from the patterned clay sheet. Then I arranged them on my baking tile in the order that I wanted to have them in the finished piece. And I'm just making a small hole in the front, sort of towards the fish's nose, and at the tail, centered in the tail, where they'll be attached to each other when the piece is finished. Then I baked all the fish on the tile just where they were, according to the manufacturer's instructions, and allowed them to cool. Once they were cool, I wanted to back them to give them a little more thickness and make them more sturdy and add a bit of an accent. I'm using some black Primo that I rolled to a setting number 1 on the clay machine. And then I used the fishy template to cut a black fish the same size as each of our white fish. A touch of bacon bond was added, and then the fish were mounted to the back of the white fish. I did place them onto that little deco disc while I was pushing the white fish down onto the black fish, so that the back has a little bit of a patterned effect too. Use a clay tool or your fingers to just clean up any edges that you need to. I want the black and white edges to meet, to be the same all the way around. Next, you want to use your needle tool to go through those first holes that you made and make holes through that second layer of black clay through each fish. Then bake them again according to the manufacturer's instructions and let them cool. Once they were cool, I wanted to bring out the details from the little fish that were done with the deco disc, and I tried a few different ways before I stumbled on one that I liked the effect. I'm using a black pigment ink, and I ended up using an eraser on a pencil. I just dab it into the pigment ink pad and then very carefully apply the ink to the surface of the raised areas of the texture. So you're just coloring the details on the little fish that are on the fish shape. To attach the fish together, I'm using some 20 gauge silver wire and some black beads. I ran the wire through the hole in the fish, brought it back around, and wrapped the end a little bit. Then I added the bead. Then I inserted the other end through the next fish and repeated. Cut away any excess wire once you're done wrapping on either side of those beads, and continue until you get to the last fish. When I got to the last fish, I added one bead and then I wrapped around the rest of the wire into a little coil where I added the jump ring and the rest of the silver chain and the closure. After I had it all assembled, I decided it needed some shine. So I went ahead and added a coat of the Create Along UV resin to each of the fish, the surface of the fish, and let it cure. And then it was ready to wear. Join me next time for more creative ideas made with products from CreateAlong.com.